Are we good to go?
Yep, we are good to go.
Great. Welcome to the January 12th, 2026 meeting of the Budget and Governmental Affairs Committee. My name is Steve Perez and I'm the chair of the committee. Tonight, we are joined by Assistant District Manager Brendan Berth. This meeting is called to order at 6:31 p.m. As a reminder, New York State law requires all committee members who are not able to attend in person to have their cameras on and their first and last names displayed from the time the meeting is called to order until the time the meeting is adjourned. Members of the public who are attending virtually, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. Members of the public who are in person, we don't have any. If we have time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. Jim Collins is taking the minutes. Thank you, Jim. Do you still feel well enough?
Yeah, I'm fine. I always
Great.
take them off the video anyway, so.
Great. I appreciate it. Thank you. We will now take attendance by roll call. Brendan will conduct the roll call.
Committee members, I will call your name. If your name is called, please say present. I will announce if there is quorum. Tanya Arias.
Present.
Jim Collins.
Here,
B. Bisman.
Present.
Rob Barfin.
present,
Kate Kennedy won't be with us tonight. Ava Marie Lassiter.
Present.
Rishma Patel will come later. Steve Perez.
Present.
Omar Qureshi, I do not see. And Miriam Ruff.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Great. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time at the board office and is reflected on the screen before you. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, please raise your hand. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from the December 8th meeting were distributed ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt the minutes as drafted. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the minutes, please raise your hand. See no objections, the minutes from December 8th meeting are adopted. They will soon be available on the CB6 website. So we have fairly small committees, so I think we can dispose with all of the ground rules, but let's make sure that we can hear each other. So give each other a chance to speak, especially those on Zoom.
I like it.
Great, so I think we can jump right into the first topic of discussion, which is the continued discussion around the Senate bills and the companion assembly bills that we were supporting discussing in regards to the energy subsidies for fossil fuels, and then the data center ones, which we just discussed at length at last committee meeting.
Right.
Thank you, Tanya, for helping to draft the one on the resolution on the energy subsidies.
Yeah,
So
I enjoyed that, by the way.
great. I'm glad it was a good experience.
It's great. I like doing it. Wow. Thank you. Thank you.
Brendan, if you can pull up the resolution, we'll open it up to comments from the committee.
Which one, the data centers one?
No, the fossil fuel subsidies.
This one.
Stop Climate Polluter Handouts Act. That's the short title.
Unless there are any whereas clauses that any of you want to highlight right away, I'll scroll to the resolved.
Yeah, let's go to the resolve first, and then we can come back.
And thank you for your help.
So it's simply saying that we endorse and support the passage of the Assembly bill / Senate bill, which is the same bill, and urges the state legislature and governor to pass the bills and sign them into law. I'll open it up now to any committee members who would like to make any suggestions for edits, changes, or comments. Jim, go ahead, Jim.
I forget the bill numbers. Which bill number is this? Is this the one from Senator Kruger or for Senator Gonzalez?
Yeah,
Senator
Senator
Krueger.
Krueger is the sponsor, correct?
Okay. Yeah, I expressed my thoughts on it on a private email to you. This is basically a tax increase on manufacturers, and actually every business that does business in New York on their tax on the fuels that they to tax the fuels that they use and consume in their business, which basically few, if any, other states do. Um, it's another burden on New York State manufacturers, particularly, which was my principal concern, um, and also on transports and on a number of other businesses. I'm opposed to it. New York is ranks consistently last as a good place to do business. And something like this is just killing New Yorkers, New York jobs, what have you. So I oppose it. I don't, I can't imagine why we would be passing this in an age where we're talking about affordability, particularly.
Go ahead, Tanya.
Jim, if we are asking New York residents and New Yorkers to take on things like local law 97, we're asked to try to bring down our carbon footprint. It's the fact that we're asking New Yorkers to do this at huge cost, I might add, because local law 97 is going to be imposing enormous costs to everyone here. Why should we continue to subsidize people who don't need these subsidies? If anything, if we should probably be using the subsidies to help buildings retrofit their buildings.
Well, 2 points in respect to that. First of all, maybe we should rethink local law 97.
Yeah, but that's not.
John Kerry, who was the carbon czar in the last administration, has said that even if we adopted every one of the climate mandates from the Paris Accords, it would affect nothing insofar as global warming would be concerned. It's simply because competitors in China and in India, what have you, are displacing far more carbon than we are. So that's one point. And the second point is that these are manufacturing businesses. Everything they produce gets resold and then taxed in its own right. So you're taxing them, taxing a manufacturer differently than you would, say, their purchase of raw materials. If they're buying, and most of the manufacturers in New York State are not huge multinational corporations. Most of them are small job shops. So you're taking guys, maybe produce $1 million, $2 million a year in revenue, and burdening them. And as I say, nothing else that they get that they use for their manufacturing is taxed. So why stick their fuels that they use in the manufacturing process at a higher tax rate? What's the difference?
Anybody else?
So, yeah, I mean, I have a couple of comments about manufacturing in particular. One, I think this bill is not eliminating all subsidies. It's very targeted to specific industries. And we heard that it's mostly affecting people who use private jets and the airline industry. So that is what we're talking about subsidizing here. There's no reason why we need to be subsidizing people's private jets. It's time that they pay their fair share. There's no reason why we should be subsidizing an industry which is I don't know, 50, 60, 70 years old. This isn't a nascent startup that we need to be subsidizing.
Right,
It is highly profitable. The other way out of that, I look at that is I'm looking at this from the perspective of the constituents of CD6. Do we have manufacturing in CD6?
no,
No. Every single taxpayer in CD6 is paying taxes to subsidize the oil companies. Every single one of us. But we don't have any manufacturing here. So it is not in the interest of CD6 to support subsidies that we're paying taxes for these people. Number two, even looking beyond CD6, Manhattan is not a manufacturing center. New York City is not a manufacturing center. We are not competing on manufacturing with other states or even the whole world. So I'm sorry, like manufacturing is a blip in the economy of New York. And if it's such a bad place to do business, explain to me why this is the center of financial world, Wall Street, service industry, tech, and all the talent is here. So like that's what I have to say. It's time to stop. These subsidies never had a sunset clause. They might have made sense decades ago, but they don't make sense in today's world.
yeah, during the oil crisis, perhaps.
And
Back in the
especially,
70s.
especially on the top of this, in the whereas, you'll notice the Trump administration has put in $4 trillion of extra subsidies of your taxpayer dollars to oil companies. So this is sort of saying like, okay, we're done putting our tiny little amount here of subsidies that we're subsidizing from New York State taxpayers. It's time to end that. So
Not
maybe
to
this
mention the
looks like-
fact that oil is at $60 a barrel, which is,
Yeah.
you know,
Exactly. B, let's go to B. You have your hand raised. B.
So I support this resolution. I think it is targeted. It really goes after the oil industry in a very effective way. I think we have to be realistic as to where we're going with the national economy. And I think this is just a statement from New York State that we need to come in and bring in certain oil manufacturing and the jobs. So I support this. And I have to echo what you said. We're not a manufacturing state per se, or a city, and CB6 does not have the manufacturing involved.
I can't find my hands up button here.
Okay, go ahead,
Can
Jim.
I respond to that? Can I respond to those comments
Yes.
if everybody else has spoken? All right. New York State economy is an economy as a whole. The financial center that's here in New York City services businesses over a number of industries, from technology to manufacturing to the airlines you mentioned, what have you. I mean, if you wanted to knock this off for fuel for private jets, fine. I have no objection to that. But I think you're not targeting it sufficiently to address the wider community of New York State, as opposed to just the very narrow interests of Community Board 6. We have very narrow interests, but I mean, our interests will all align with the rest of New York State. And, you know, the interests of the people who eat in our diners, who stay in our hotels, who ride in our taxi cabs. Many of them come from Long Island. They come from upstate New York. They come throughout the state. And you know, if you're killing their business, they're not going to be coming to New York to do business anymore because they won't be able to afford it. So I think it's hyper partisan, not partisan, but what's the word I'm looking for? Hyper local, and I think that's a mistake because it hurts the rest of New York State, and New York State has to pay the bills ultimately for a lot of things New York State does.
Let's go to B. B, you have your hand raised. Go ahead. Are you unmuted? I can't see.
Yeah, B, you're on mute.
B, you're on mute. See that? While we wait for B, let's go to Tanya.
Jim, I'm looking at, manufacturing accounts for roughly 4.8 to 5.8% of the economy of New York. 4.8 to 5.8%. And, no one's gonna stop coming to New York because we did away with tax exemptions for jets and airlines and for a very minimal percentage of our economy. New York is not known for manufacturing. That's not what we're known for. And I think that this is a very targeted, and important legislation by Liz. I think it goes straight to, an unnecessary gift that is no longer necessary. Oil is $60 a barrel. With the crisis of oil prices of the 70s, which I'm old enough to remember, that's long gone. There's no reason to keep these subsidies on. And it's not gonna stop the business in New York. It really isn't.
Let's go to B next. B, are you ready?
Sorry, I'm now muted. So I was gonna call the question. We had a long discussion about this. I think it's time just to call the question.
Yep, I agree. Let's go ahead and vote on the resolution.
Okay. So when I call your name, please say whether you're in favor, opposed, abstain, or not entitled. Tanya Arias,
In favor.
Jim Collins,
Opposed.
B. Desmond,
In favor,
Rob Barfin,
In favor.
Ava Marie Lassiter,
In favor.
Steve Perez,
In favor.
and Marion Rowe. With 6 committee members in favor and 1 opposed, this resolution passes.
Great. Thank you. We can all move on then to the next resolution, which we also discussed at length, and we'll let Brendan pull it up on the screen.
The data center one.
Data centers, right?
This is the main thing they're building now in the United States. And I think we're heading to another bubble to rubble.
Could be. So let's see. Yeah, I think similar to the other bill, the resolve clause is it's very simply worded, simply states that we support these 2 bills. Well, there's actually 4 bills because it's 2 bills, but
Right.
each one has a Senate version and an Assembly version, but they're identical essentially. One is around the disclosure of the data centers, which we discussed the first time, and then the one we learned about when I forget his name, was here from Senator Gonzalez's office, explained that the ACDC Act was the companion, and that was more about the rate charge differentiator between the 2.
I actually think that's a really important point.
So they go hand in hand
They go
together, and
hand in
that's what we learned. And so we added that into the resolution. And so this kind of covers all of those points of the 4 bills. So I'll open it up to the committee for amendments, edits, or comments.
Does the blue underneath governor mean that we need a capital G?
Is governor capitalized?
Or no?
I think only when it's.
Governor, if it's properly titled, if it's Governor Hochul, yes,
Right.
otherwise
Okay.
it should be low.
I don't know why that's
I don't know why it's blue
highlighted
then.
down there. Okay. So any comments, edits, questions?
No, it was very well done. Thank you, Steve. It was great.
Some, again, my hand,
Go ahead, Jim.
if I can. Similar issues. This one, I mean, I have no objection to advising the community when these things go up and having a public hearing about when they go up. These data centers and what have you. But just in terms of specifics, it's very hard to isolate the additional cost of electricity to a particular, of producing additional electricity to a particular user of that. Meta just entered into a big deal with one of the, I think it's a nuclear company last week, but it's not something that, you can, it's not like, I think the mention I gave to you, Steve, was it's not as if you're building a sewer line in a new development where you can charge the developer directly. I don't know how you're gonna segregate individual, any additional, electrical load or the production of additional electrical load to a data center that is using it. Because that electricity is gonna be used by residences and other businesses. It just doesn't seem realistic to me. So if anything, I guess I'm gonna have to abstain on this one.
Any other comments? Go ahead, Eva Marie.
Well, we had discussed this at the last meeting, that even the background, before this bill was even discussed in the meeting, they had background on the accompanying bill stating what had happened in California
Right.
with a specific city where the public was absorbing an enormous amount of what was happening with the data center. So that even though the gentleman speaking had said what Jim was saying, he finally did say in the ACDC that there has to be a way to aggregate what should be charged to the public, because it can't be one big pie and then we divide it equally and then the consumer is stuck with the bill, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I'm very in favor, if we are considering that there is going to be that, I would say, portioning out as to what the public, especially the public that lives near our data center, is supposed to pay. I'm very much in favor of the ACDC.
From a technical standpoint, I find it really hard to believe that you would not be able to meter out what a
Right.
center
Right.
produces. That is just doesn't make any sense. I mean,
Oh, no, you can
Yeah.
meter out the electricity. I'm talking about the cost of building the facility to make the electricity.
what?
No, in that bill, they state that there's a certain percentage that the data centers are responsible for to
Right.
even build the infrastructure. So that's the
Right.
other part,
Yeah.
that I was
Right.
saying to, that cost will be going to the data company, so to speak. But, as, Tanya was saying, I find it very, when he said there's no way to actually judge it. There's a way when we get our
Of course,
bills
when
to
we get our
judge,
bills,
to judge
absolutely.
whether or not, well, your bill is much higher than your neighbor's. There's a way to
Absolutely.
judge that. So I found that, and also in the news this week, first, they were discussing that. And the question came up to, the federal administration as to, the cost to the consumer and how it's going up. And the spokesman said, oh, that's because of the data centers. And I'm saying, that's what we were talking about at the meeting. So they know that there has to be a way to.
Exactly, but there is, as I say, when you're generating electricity, it's like generating, I don't know, it's like generating air. Man,
No.
hold on. If you're generating air, all right, and you're in a room with 100,000 people, all right, everybody's going to be breathing some of that air, and you don't know how to allocate the cost of the capital, the capex, the capital expenditure to build that electrical generating site. That's my point. That's why I don't think this is workable over the long term. I think it's, that's the problem with it. Everybody's gonna be using that electricity to various degrees. All right. And frankly, the amount that the data center is using is going to be reflected in their metered rate. The amount that you as a residence or a business is using is going to be reflected in their metered rate.
But that's not what's happening.
Everybody's going to be using it. Everybody's going to be using it. So
That's not what's been happening though, Jim. That's not what has been happening. The entire public has had to absorb the increased energy cost of these data centers. And in Virginia, it has become an absolute nightmare, the same in California. And the fact of the matter is that I just heard this morning in the news that the only thing that's being built in the US right now are data centers. And, the thought is that we're heading down another dot-com bubble, but that's for another discussion. So the energy that these monsters use impact everyone. And so there has to be a cost to them. We can't-
Exactly, and it will be reflected in their metered rate. In other words, if the charge of electricity is, let's say, I don't know, 15%, 15 cents per kilowatt hour, all right? And the data centers are using, a gazillion kilowatt hours or whatever they're gonna use, and you're using 1,000, it's gonna be reflected in your metered rate. Okay,
Not how utility pricing works. Unfortunately, it's not that straightforward, Jim.
well,
They
I'm talking about the capital cost, and
There's-
that's what
there's-
nobody's addressing. How
There's
are you
certain
gonna
capital
allocate
costs.
the capital cost?
The utilities are pretty smart. They're not gonna build things that they can't recover through rates that they're collecting or pricing or fees. But the problem is they're spreading those costs across all consumers.
Right.
They're not targeting. The reason why, I mean, all of us are using more energy efficient appliances. We're using, the population hasn't gone up, so why should our electricity bills be going, Con Ed is asking for double-digit increases. Does that make any sense? No, only because somebody must be using electricity that we need to supply, right? So unfortunately, like in the perfect world, it would work out the way that you're explaining, Jim, but it doesn't.
Well,
That's not how utility pricing works. And if you read some of the articles I had sent, the way utility pricing works, it's a completely opaque process
Yeah.
that is not subject to public review.
Well,
even
yeah, the Public
transparency.
Service Commission looks at it.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
PSC
So we
looks
don't
at it.
actually know how those rates are cut, how they come up with them, how they're allocated. So there's a lot of there's a black box there that we're not privy to. So,
Well,
but
that's an issue for the PSC.
just say that what we know based on the experience of other places around the country that have experienced, this is not, we're not inventing something here that's a problem that doesn't exist. It's an actual problem, and we're trying to get ahead of it because we know it's
Mhm.
coming. Yeah.
I'm sorry, disagree.
Okay.
Does anyone
Can
want
we
to call the question?
Yes, can we call
Go
the
ahead,
question?
Tanya.
Mhm.
Anyone second? Thank
Second.
you. Let's go ahead and vote on the resolution.
Okay, when I call your name, please say whether you're in favor, opposed, abstain, or not entitled. Tanya Arias,
In favor.
Jim Collins,
Abstain.
Bee Disman,
In favor,
Rob Barfin,
In favor.
Ava Marie Lassiter,
In favor,
Steve Perez,
In favor.
and Miriam Ruff.
In favor.
With 6 committee members in favor and 1 abstention, this resolution passes. And just one question, these will be before full board on Wednesday
Yeah.
or next month?
Well, technically, we have to do this 3 days before.
Ooh.
So unless it's time sensitive, which these aren't really time
They're
sensitive.
not time sensitive.
So I would say we can have them be on the
The February full board.
February. Yeah,
Okay, just wanted to confirm.
They're not up for vote for anything. They're still in committee.
no, yeah.
Okay.
They're still in committee, so. Okay, shall we move on to the next agenda item,
Mhm.
which is the open meetings law? Brendan distributed ahead of time,
Mhm.
everyone a copy of the open meetings law. And the 2 most recent resolutions that we passed in relation to those 2 laws. One of those resolutions was simply about how Community Board 6 would operate within the context of hybrid meetings, which is allowed under the open meeting law context. The other one was in support of a specific bill that Alex Boris put forward, which would allow would do away with requirements for in-person participation for community boards.
Ooh.
Which we supported, obviously through that resolution. And what I understand is that I looked it up, that resolution was passed in 2024. And then in 2025, it was resubmitted. That bill didn't go anywhere in 2024. In 2025, it was renumbered. the new number, it was renumbered to A1256
Okay,
and reintroduced, but also didn't make it through the legislative session, or, didn't get passed this year. So I had reached out actually to a representative from the district manager for Alex Forrest to ask, is
Will
it
it be
going, is it going to
resubmitted?
be reintroduced again in
Right.
2026? Because I'm assuming, it's something that we would still support. We all had always wanted to go to that. In order to be able to hold meetings, right, without having the in-person requirement.
yeah,
That wasn't put in place during COVID, but I haven't received a response back yet, so I'm not sure what the state of that bill is. But I thought it would be a good opportunity to, if we're going to ask for some changes to come about, in addition to those, the one that we'd already asked for in those resolutions, if there's anything else that we wanted to put on the table as far as recommending changes to open meetings law. And I'm stalling a little bit. Rushma was on her way. She was the one who sort of brought this to our attention because there were specific issues that came up in CB6 at the casino hearings when the CAC was conducting its public hearings. So there were certain reasons that she also thought we should take a look at, maybe making recommendations to how the open meetings law is implemented.
oh, I
And
would love to hear her point of
one of
view.
the, so I'll start and I'll let her help explain it when she gets here, that so
Okay.
one of the items that came up during the casino hearing was that apparently the guidance that they received from the state council was that t-shirts were allowed. So with slogans, in support of or against or whatever, t-shirts would allow, because they didn't want to police the way what people were wearing, right? Dress. But that banning signs was okay, because that might disrupt the meeting or obscure the people from being able to see what was happening. So, but the objection there was, but treated the people who were putting forward the casino proposal have all the money in the world to print out t-shirts for everybody to say, I support the casino, whereas handmade signs were not allowed in the venue.
Well, I was at all those
So-
meetings, so I can tell you my impressions. T-shirts or no t-shirts, the casino people basically took over the meetings, of the first 4 hours was, the union and the contractors and the casino people, and oh, Mohegan Sun is the best thing that ever happened to us and the whole thing. So even if they weren't wearing t-shirts, they had been all paid to go there. So this was a true democratic process. I found that it was a true democratic process because the people that were against the casino, which were many, were just normal, everyday people that had taken their days off from work, had to, run in and out to go get their children from school and then come back in, because you would all get a number. And in spite of either the t-shirts or the money, the community spoke and won. So I personally am against having the signs. I think it's very disruptive. And in fact, they tried to give me a sign several times and I wouldn't take it. Even though it was against the casino, I just felt that it wasn't proper. So I think there's bigger problems than that. I think the fact that there were so many people that had, and she lives, that had been, set up. That to me was a bigger problem, because it was very frustrating for the community.
All right,
Rashma,
we're on open meetings law.
we just started.
Okay, yeah,
on
I
the-
apologize.
On the discussion of the open meetings law.
Yeah.
So I just introduced the experience
Yeah.
that the only
The
thing I
emails
talked
gave
about
every-
was talked about the t-shirts and
Yeah.
the signs
Yes.
and that being a disparity
Yeah,
in what people were allowed to bring into the venue.
Yeah.
So Tanya just gave her observations about
okay.
being
So I was
at the meeting.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I'm glad you guys were there. And, I knew I was gonna be late for this. I sent him an email about what the issues I wanted to bring up. So I'm glad you brought that up. So in addition to the fact that, and it's not, I don't know if you mentioned this or not, but it's not in the open meeting law per se that you can't bring in signs and t-shirts, but then there was a case that happened with a community upstate where there was something in 2004 that made it so that they said that signs are disruptive, but you can't control what people wear. So even if it has something offensive, you could still wear it. And so when we had our Freedom Plaza Community Advisory Committee meeting, at the first one, there were two people that I knew from the Tudor City area who came with homemade signs
Yeah.
that said no casino. Meanwhile, I think there were like maybe 30 to 50 people with Freedom Plaza hats on and, and stuff. But then after that first meeting, the Sullivan group messaged us and said, hey, we want no signs at the thing. And so I wrote back, I was like, no, because if we're not gonna have signs, then you should not have any Freedom Plaza t-shirts,
Right.
hats, or anything, any other paraphernalia. And they're like, but that's different, you can't police what people wear. And I was like, and then the state representative, the governor's representative came back with this, and I forwarded to him like, oh, this is our council says this, this, and this. And since I was the only one who had an issue with it, I didn't push it at that time, because I'm not a lawyer, and I didn't see it in the open meetings law, but I was like, I don't know. But then I brought this up with both Harvey Epstein, who was our assembly member at the time, Kristen Gonzalez, state senate. They're like, we didn't know that was in the open meetings law. And so no one seemed to know. And that's when I then found this other statute and what the state was referring to.
Okay,
But like I said, at that point in time, we were not able to do that. And at the second meeting, we said no signs, but we didn't regulate what people wore.
right.
And I don't know, were you at the second meeting too?
I was at all the meetings.
Yeah,
and,
you were.
I was telling Steve and Marion and Maria and everybody else that, I didn't think that having signs was appropriate.
Yes.
So every time they would try to give me a sign, and I told the people from the Corinthian, please don't bring
Yeah.
signs. it's just disruptive. It's
Also, it was Corinthian, not Tudor City people.
no, it was Corinthian.
Yeah,
And no, not Tudor City.
Yeah.
In fact, there were very few Tudor City
Yeah.
people there. I think I was the most vocal
Yeah.
Tudor City person there. And,
yeah,
and I didn't want to have that because it's irritating.
yeah,
And, it irritates the other side and it creates, I think oddly enough, because you witnessed it,
yeah,
even though we had hours and hours of pro casino
yeah,
paid off people, the community won.
yes.
And we won just purely from grassroots movement, from signatures, from.
Yeah, signatures, but also the people who are on the committee, right?
Right.
So the issue I have is, but were you okay with the hats and stuff like Freedom Plaza, if someone had a t-shirt that said Freedom Plaza? or
I was
hat there?
I was actually more offended by the fact that he brought food and was feeding people. I
Yeah,
think that should definitely be prohibited.
prohibitive, okay,
That
Yeah.
to me was absolutely over the top.
yeah,
That Freedom Plaza brought food and drink and was giving out,
Everyone?
yeah, and was, yeah.
yeah, they had.
That I
yeah.
think was
But it
bad.
was for everybody, right? Didn't matter how you were voting, but still, you
And
thought.
I
it
don't
was
care.
different. Yeah,
I don't care. That is,
Like a bribe.
that's a bribe.
yes,
And I despise
yeah,
corruption.
yeah, no,
So to me, that should probably, maybe we should do something.
yeah, so we can bring that up, because again, that was an issue, and the argument that I got back was that, well, it's for everybody, it's not just
We don't
one.
care.
Like, in the first meeting, they had actually an upstairs room. If you came to the first meeting, you would have seen that they had a separate room upstairs, and a lot of people in the community got upset because they're like, well, a bunch of people in suits were able to walk in and we weren't in, because, we had
Right.
a capacity issue. And that was because they had the room for their people to go up, and they had food and stuff for them to say. So we then were able to stop them for the second meeting to not to have this, a room rented upstairs, because we wanted that for everybody, right, as overflow. And with the food, because it was for everybody, that was like, but the other issue I had was the fact that for the first 2 hours, like, there were people, I heard again from the community, that their moms who had school pickup,
Right.
or someone like, if works at Trader Joe's as a manager, wanted to come during his break to testify, couldn't, because they had 2 hours of testimony from Mohegan Sun employees that
That's
came in.
right. That's what I
So
was.
one of the
just saying.
changes that I, again, put this in the message is, like to do is, first of all, you should be able to register online and be able to, like, it was on YouTube, right? So you could have waited, and you're close enough, right? You could have waited at your apartment, saw that they're at number 89, I'm number 99, I can walk over
Right.
and be there in time. And they did, and they said, you have to be there, sign up and stay the whole time.
Yeah.
So that I thought was unfair. And I think that we should make a rule that says that it should be one pro, one against,
That's it.
right, each turn.
Each turn.
And
you
no
want-
more than 10 people in a row from any one group.
Right.
Because then when you bring in something like 100 employees in Mohegan Sun or something
Yeah.
like that, it's problematic.
Okay,
Yeah.
Dee, you've had your hand raised for a while. Let's go to you.
So I actually have problems with this discussion. I'm a big First Amendment person. I think people can wear whatever signage and expression that they want. I also think we're trying to look at the open meetings law and deal with process. I think this is a whole separate issue. I wouldn't complicate the open meetings law. It's meant for something else. I actually had concerns the way the hearings were done. I think they could have done it on Zoom. They could have done many other things. So I think your concerns are the structure of the meetings and what they were doing, but it's not really the open meetings law. It had nothing to do with it. And the case that you're talking about, I don't know how extensive it is and what the general counsel really meant, but this is a First Amendment issue. And I wouldn't support anything that prescribes the details that you're talking about.
I mean, that's a valid point. Again, these issues that I had when we were on the committee, the pushback I got was that, oh, it's the open meetings law won't allow it, is what I got from the state. So that's why I brought it up as an open meetings law issue. But I see your point on that. And yeah,
I would agree that
Yeah.
it became an issue, especially when somebody from the state office is saying legally, the open meetings law is saying you cannot allow signs. That was what the interpretation, so
yeah,
something is
you
wrong.
should share the email with the
Something
whole
is
group.
wrong with the law. I
Yeah.
also agree with B that we
Yeah.
shouldn't legislate in a law all the minutia
Yeah.
of like how to run a meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
Because who knows if it's gonna work
Yeah.
or in every situation, right? But I think we might be able to add something, suggest adding something to the open meetings law that has to do with freedom of expression.
Yeah,
That basically says public bodies shall not make or enforce rules that impinge on the freedom of expression of attendees
yes,
at any public hearing, which I think goes to B's point about freedom. But the point is that legal counsel in New York State did say this was not allowed. So it was saying you cannot bring signs.
So I have to tell you, having worked with legal counsel a lot, one should have challenged it and gone up the ladder because it made no sense.
Right.
So
Yeah.
but you're in favor of the signs?
I'm in favor of any freedom of expression. That's the First Amendment. And I'm not going to legislate a meeting by saying what you could do and what you can't do. We all support well, I should say many of us support the First Amendment. And saying you can't bring a sign in or wear T-shirts is too specific and controlling of a meeting.
Well, they told us they could,
Yeah.
they said that we couldn't bring in signs.
yeah, no, and I agree with that, and that was the thing that I pushed for, but I was the only one. And there was not enough time, because the meetings were, it was done in a 2-month time period to push it up the ladder, and then like I said, I brought it up with both our state electeds on this issue. And, frankly, the only person who really listened to me was Steve, and this is why we're discussing it now.
But I think it's
Yeah.
a valid point, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that.
Because what B is saying is really was my issue, is
Right.
that, yeah.
Right.
That if you're gonna do one, then you should do both, because I felt it was the same year restriction.
Right.
Yeah.
And to your point about the access to the meeting and people having this,
Yeah,
we actually had a pretty lengthy discussion at exec
yes,
regarding a similar issue, and that is like, what happens when 150 people sign up to attend a committee meeting, which
we've had happen,
has
yeah,
happened, right? What do you do? And we allow 3 minutes,
Yeah.
right? And so you say, we're gonna be here for 5 hours
yeah,
listening, or like, how would you regulate that? We'd had a long discussion at executive,
Yeah.
but anyway, it's similar to your point
Yeah.
about like, would you allow for signups? But I really think that that kind of level of operational detail should be in the hands of whoever's running that meeting.
yeah.
To decide
When
what's the
this-
best
Yeah, but
mechanism.
when it's a state
and
issue,
what's
right?
appropriate.
Because
Yeah.
all of these things, when brought up at the meeting, there was pushback. And the commission is a state-run commission, right? And so
Right.
I don't know who was really controlling a lot of that. Like, I would have liked to have had it on Zoom. Right, but they would say, no, it's not possible.
Right.
And look at the 3 Manhattan casinos got turned away, right? We have people who live in our district have a lot more free time than people who live in Flushing and Elmhurst, right? There are people who work multiple jobs, so maybe those people just didn't get a chance to come and show up to these hearings. We don't know. I wasn't involved in that, right? So I see this as a bigger issue in other communities where people may not have flexible time to be able to show up at these types of meetings.
But would you say that, for example, being able to be in person at a meeting is one way to participate and make your voice heard? But
Yeah.
what about writing, like written testimony was also
Yeah,
accepted?
written, and
So would that be a way to sort of level to say like, okay, maybe lots of people don't have time, but they have time to write an email?
7,000 submissions are only about 300 from the community. They had set up, you could go to their website and fill out a template and then have it sent.
Got it.
And so there were a lot more emails being sent that way. They were automated emails. So then my pushback with that was, I'm only taking an email, I'm reading it if it's sent to me individually. Like, you have sent me an email, but I'm not taking one that's come from some template.
Got it.
Yeah, and that one, others agreed with me on that. But to your point that the community won because of that. But if someone hadn't pushed back on that, there would have been a lot more pro emails than anti emails.
Yeah, because they had generated, it was like there were a lot more pro people.
Yeah.
Testifying than against.
Yeah.
Because they literally bust in hundreds and hundreds of people from Mohegan Sun. We spent what, 2 hours listening to Mohegan
Yeah.
Sun employees? It's like, really? Seriously? Oh, Mohegan Sun is my parent. They treat me like family. Like,
Yeah. And so my concern is this issue is done, but just in other communities, and even if something comes up in our community that is a state-run process, I don't want there to be a situation where those kind of things can happen again.
Right. Go ahead, B.
So I was actually going to say, I think this is a case-by-case situation, depending on what the hearings are and how you deal with it and what the process is. So I think, to me, being able to be on Zoom because of my disability, but the other thing is we have many people of the public that participate. So I think having Zoom available for hearings as your ones that you're talking about is really important and should be part of the standard operating of all committees and conferences, that Zoom is available. That is the open meetings law, as opposed to the signage issues.
Yeah, and I agree with B, like we should put in that any such public hearings should have a Zoom option. Right, because this has also come up with the cannabis licensing board. When we had the whole Flintstone thing happening, I happened to be in Massachusetts. I really wanted to testify for that. They're like, no, there's no Zoom option for that. Right, and so I think that would be great if we could have a Zoom option for everybody in meetings.
I mean, but to have the open meetings law specify that there
that's what
must
yeah,
be.
whether it's the casino commission, whether it's the cannabis, liquor license people, all of those state licensing groups, there should be a Zoom option for people.
there should be.
Because
Absolutely.
there could be a disability, people could be sick. I was in Massachusetts because my dad was sick and I couldn't show up, like those kind of things happen.
Or you're traveling, or you're
Yeah.
out on a business trip, or
Yeah.
whatever.
But remember, like, when we have a state law that applies to all public bodies, that if a group wouldn't have the technical ability, the resources to do a Zoom.
Well, it would be.
No, it's an option.
It's an
not
option
a-
to do both, right? So
No,
if
no,
somebody
it's an
can come in
option.
person, they can come in person.
They can come in person, yeah, no, but you have, like we have now. You can either be
Right.
here in person or you can be here
Right.
on Zoom.
Yeah, but in those two situations, there was no ability to testify by Zoom. And what B's saying, that actually then addresses a lot of these other issues that I was bringing up, where somebody who is only coming on their break or has a child to pick up could do it by Zoom and not have the restrictions of in person.
Sure.
And that's not in the law right now, right? It has to be in person.
Well, that's another question I have, because actually I looked at so there's the entire hybrid article of the law, which is 103A, video conferencing by
Yeah,
public bodies,
I think so. It's-
expires on July
But
1st.
yeah, because it was a temporary fix that we put in,
So
yeah,
of
Yeah.
this year.
yeah.
So my
Right.
question is it going to be renewed, or what happens when this entire clause disappears? Are we allowed to do, I mean, there's nothing that I read in the open meetings law that states you cannot do Zoom. So I'm
That's what I
wondering
thought.
what happens when 103A becomes void and is no longer
Yeah.
valid, because that's where it specifies all this thing about so much in quorum has to be present in person and,
Yeah.
you know, all of those rules.
Yeah,
But that all is in that chapter, which is gonna be deleted as of July first.
Yeah, so we got sidetracked with this issue, but
Yeah.
the other reason why we wanted to discuss this open meeting law is to get that extended or made permanent. And
Right.
as you know, right, we've had multiple fixes for this since April of 2020.
Right.
Yeah,
Jesus.
So to that expiry question, so it had been, there had been an expiration date before and it got extended. It's possible it'll get extended again. They'll just kind of kick the can down the road if it's working well enough. Or yes, it's possible it'll go away. If it goes away, I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know. But if it goes away, the way that just the way the open meetings law was before the pandemic indicated that you can video conference. However, you can only do that if the location where that video conference is taking place is public. So if you're in your apartment on Zoom, your apartment address needs to be on our website as a place where the public can go and watch on Zoom with you. You know, if you're in a hotel room in Thailand, that hotel room in Thailand will need to be put up on an address on
Oh
our
my-
website as a place where people can go and watch with you on Zoom. That's how video conferencing happened in pre-pandemic days. Obviously, that is such a rare occurrence that anyone would need to do that. It's the hurdle, the operational hurdle, and just the personal hurdle is not worth the trouble. We never did that. But that is what if if it would go back to the way it was before the pandemic, that's what it would be.
and if you look at other state bodies that did have that, like, for instance, the cannabis and the community advisory committee, not ours, but one for the West Side, somebody who was at one of those meetings, like when they had the kickoff meeting, was in Vietnam, and they listed that as a location, like the hotel he was in Vietnam. Yeah.
Okay. It's crazy, but
Yeah,
Little, too much information.
yeah, exactly.
so where do we go from here? What do you?
So
what
I
do you
think that I
suggest?
would propose, I mean, we have had a resolution in place for this open meetings law to make the Zoom option, hybrid
Permanent.
option permanent, right? The
Yeah.
language that's there, we had wanted to be a little bit stronger, that we could do our meetings fully on Zoom. That didn't go anywhere, right? So I would say, one, for any public hearings that happen, that public should be able to testify via Zoom. I would want to add that.
Mhm.
I think, and in this, it's the other decision that they made on this that gave that pushback, which is a freedom of speech issue.
Yeah.
Right, but I don't know how we address it here, that we may need to go to that statute to address it.
Well, that wasn't a specific statute,
Yeah.
it was actually so
It was an
it
interpretation.
was an interpretation, so what they said was that the Committee on Open Government can issue, I can't remember where it said that. Yeah, but they can issue an opinion,
Yes,
right, as to their interpretation.
oh, so
it's
that
not-
was an opinion
it was
and
an
not
opinion.
an amendment or
No.
statute, yeah,
So that was simply the way it was
yeah.
interpreted.
Oh, so
by
that's interesting,
whoever.
so then how, because then the body is able to interpret how they want to.
But that's why I say I agree with you that perhaps to strengthen language,
Language, yeah.
but broadly,
Yeah.
we don't wanna
Yeah, we don't wanna go into
go
minute.
into operationalizing
Yeah.
meetings, of how they
Yeah.
should happen, but just say like,
No food.
there should not
Yeah.
be any restrictions
Yes.
on free speech
Yeah.
in any form,
Wow.
unless it's gonna affect the safety and security of,
Yeah.
the attendees.
Yeah.
Like that, something like
Yeah,
that.
something like
because
that, I
it's
think
something
putting it
broad, but,
broadly,
like,
that's a good
that way,
suggestion.
the legal counsel and the governor's office can read that and say,
Okay.
oh,
Yeah.
I can't say t-shirts are not allowed, but,
Yeah.
or vice versa,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah,
I just wanted to know if there can be a structure so that there isn't an entity that is controlling the quote unquote open meeting. When Tanya was saying, the 5 hours or however long, the people from the casino and then the unions and so forth. To me, that's a technique to beat down the public you're so exhausted by the
Yeah.
time they're
Yes.
over and over, forget about the food.
And
so forth.
frustrated. It was
And it's very, and you get
Yeah, so
frustrated
this
and
is
you may
where
have to go.
My frustration comes.
So
from.
that,
It's
to me,
frustrating.
there should be a structure as to not individual people, like you have 3 minutes, but that, let's say there is 45 minutes dedicated to what I would say the corporate public, if they're making a presentation and they want to speak, and then the public, civilians like ourselves, would know then, all right, at that 45 minutes, we get an additional 45 where individuals come and they could be, it's freedom of speech, they could be in favor of the casinos, they could be against, but there has to be more of a structure. So that, to me, what you described was such strategy to beat down on.
Oh, they were beating, yeah, they were.
To beat down on the public, that can't happen when it's called an open meeting, is a way to do that, and we're not infringing on anybody's First Amendment rights. Is that something that could be put in?
Well, I think what B is saying is that that's getting too procedural.
I don't think structuring the time is procedural. There has to be some sort of structure, because when the corporate entity comes in, if there's no structure, they're going to decide the structure and they're going to control the meeting. And that's what it sounded like.
Yeah, which is what they tried to do here. The thing is, they did have a presentation time, so we had set aside a certain amount of time for them to present at both meetings. And then these are just people come testify, and the way that testifying was on a first come, first served basis, anybody can sign up.
That's not a presentation. That's not really.
Yeah.
See, that's, to me, that's a loophole where it's not a
Yeah, and they had their
presentation.
people show up, and it was something
Bus
bus full of people, something I had not expected to even happen.
But-
We
Yeah,
had-
but that has the open meetings law. I mean, that's what we're confusing. Operational procedures don't belong in the law.
Yeah.
They belong in rules of committees. And I would assume that we could say in the open meetings law that when there are public hearings and stuff, they should establish ground rules. And that's what you're really talking about. Not talking about telling what the ground rules are. I mean, I've just done so many of these. There was an attempt not to be transparent. Let's be honest. You know, they did what they did from a political point of view. So I wouldn't focus just on the casino or the cannabis, but on all the other meetings that take place that the public has an opportunity.
Go ahead, Jim.
Refresh my memory, wasn't there this meeting farmed out to an independent company of some sort?
Yeah, it was a consultant that was hired to run the.
Yeah,
process,
that shouldn't be permitted either. If it's gonna be a governmental decision, government should be in charge of running it, not some third-party vendor who can be influenced for any number of reasons. I noticed that when I saw it, and I objected to it at that point, but I ended up sending in my comments because I knew from past experience that you'd be sitting there for 4 and 6 and 8 hours waiting to speak. I mean, I've spoken at MTA meetings, I've spoken at the city council, and it's a mess. They should sign up with a time and let you register a time, and that should be at every meeting in New York State.
Yeah, and I brought up that time issue because Jim had told me this even before anything started. He's like, I don't like public meetings for this reason. Yeah.
Although my understanding is that consulting group was simply the operational logistics of it.
Person,
Like, ultimately, the CAC had the ability
The rules,
to decide.
we had the ability to decide.
Had the ability to set the rules and say, this is what we're gonna allow, this is what we're not gonna allow. So it wasn't just it wasn't a
No,
consultant
it
that was in
wasn't,
charge.
and the only thing was that we had as you saw from the emails, the governor's office pushing back on everything. That I wanted it to be more restrictive and saying that, no, legally, that this is the way it is under the one open meetings law. And even something in the first meeting, we had people say their zip code, and they told us that, no, don't ask for zip codes next time, so.
Really?
Don't ask for the zip code? Don't ask for the zip code? That's because they bring in ringers.
Yeah, that's what they did. That's
Why
exactly what
would
they
that
did.
be
Well,
not,
first of all,
why would that be illegal?
Well, it wasn't illegal, it was their preference for it, because first of all, anytime, someone with a zip code that wasn't in this area, they got booed at their first meeting. Right, and the point was that this impacts everybody, it's not just the people in this zip code, so other people should be able
Right, but
to.
transparently, I mean, you can establish that
Yeah,
rule.
yeah, but never did I think that they were bringing people from all the way out in Connecticut, which isn't like, not even like Stamford, it's like way out far,
Way
Connecticut.
out.
That you- Yeah, that you can't even take a train to, please.
Go ahead,
So
Tanya.
to follow up on what B is saying, the law is the law, right? The open meetings law, but it should provide for a framework of rules for each specific meeting. For example, what we were talking about. It'll be 45 minutes in pro or 45 minutes against, or one pro, one against. Who establishes those rules, though?
The committee leading that process. should
As
be-
long as it meets the requirements of the open meetings law, that everybody gets to express themselves and all of that. The law will protect and will provide, for example, if the CAC would have said, okay, you know what? You can't bring 200 buses of people here. This is not how it's going to work. You're going to have, there's a certain limited number of people from Mohegan Sun. I mean, there has to be some form of control, because honestly, that was completely out of control, and it wasn't their fault. It was just these people bust in.
Yeah.
I mean, it was horrific. You should hear the community was just groaning. It was like, oh my God, seriously?
True, but I just don't see how there's any way around that from this establishing. It's up to the committee controlling.
And how
controlling
do
the
you
specific-
then make sure that the committee though is being in support of the community and not, you know.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that you could support both sides if it's even. You know, if it's one pro, one against, or 15 minutes for the pro, or 15 minutes for the
Yeah.
against. Everybody gets the same amount of time,
Yeah.
but this was completely skewed, as you remember.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I 100% agree with you. I also see the point that B is making, and that's why I'm thinking about this, because I came into it, if you read the emails that I sent Steve, proposing what you're saying, all the issues but I see what B's saying is that why are we micromanaging and making it, because this applies to every meeting in the state, right? So
Right.
like, for instance, even the open meetings law that us as community board members, we're volunteers, but we're still being applied to that same rule where our address has to be shown. Right, and there, some could argue there should be a distinction between an elected official and someone who's a volunteer, right? So how do we not make this so burdensome that then it makes it hard to have any meetings, right? So that's the only concern about that, because it could be some other
Right.
issue.
Or there's like, I was imagining an issue where 90% of the people there are against, or
Yeah.
let's say 90% of people are against it.
Yeah.
But then you're saying, no matter if there's only one person, we have to give them equal time, even though there's like 1 out of 1,000 that holds that point of view. No, it doesn't make any sense, right?
Mhm.
Like, so it's really dependent on the issue, the circumstances, the context. And I don't think we want to legislate ahead of time how that should operate, but let's go to Jesus. He's
Yeah,
got a comment. Jesus?
I'm sorry.
Yes, having had to get acquainted with the open meetings law for the past 10 years, I will look, I'm still not a lawyer. That does not make me an expert on this, but I would recommend for those members who are interested in this topic to just like read it. It is only 6 pages long, so it's manageable. It's not like Anna Karenina or anything. Some of these things that are being proposed are like they're not at all open meetings law sounding kinds of things. The open meetings law is concerned with making the meetings as open as the law says and as accessible as possible. That's all it cares about. It's biased towards physical locations because that's what it was before the pandemic. In-person meetings, minutes that need to be that needs to be posted within 2 weeks, not abusing executive session privileges. It's all about making the meetings as accessible to the public as possible. So I saw some of the same things that others are describing about what went on with the casino public hearings, and I was dismayed by those too. But I have to, agree with B that, um, I would need to see, or I would be curious to see exact proposals of what some of these folks want, because before, I guess, passing judgment, because some of these things are so far like out of what the open meetings law really addresses that, I wonder whether they would just be shot down instantly. Um, so if, as a suggestion, maybe read the open meetings law for those who haven't, because many members don't really need to, and it's very dry. Um, just to sort of see what's there already, and you will find that some of this stuff that's being proposed is very foreign to it. And two, maybe start writing down either in a draft reso or even just a bullet point list or something of what specifically what one would want. And then, we could see if maybe the Committee on Open Government or, um, general counsel for maybe the Borough President's office or for the law department or something could see if they could help us gauge how sensible, how realistic some of these proposals might be.
Thank you, Jesus. That's very helpful, because I think the disconnect comes from, because both Steve and I have read the open meetings law, and when you read it, you don't see it. At the time this came up, I didn't see it, but then the governor's office, and they were lawyers, and I too, not being a lawyer, was just like, well, if this is what the lawyers are saying, I'm not gonna push back on it. So that was my reaction. But now hearing everyone's thing is that it's the interpretation of the people who run the open meetings law. So that, and I think your suggestion to talk to a borough president or the city law department about those things is good. And I recommend for this open meetings law resolution, I think we should do one asking that public meetings have a Zoom option for people to testify, because I think that would go under the open meeting law. And then to have this, ask for this extension of open meetings law for bodies like the community board and others.
At least extension of what's there.
There, yeah, exactly.
We would like to have to
Yes.
be able to do Zoom
Yeah,
and count for quorum on Zoom and all of that,
yeah,
as we did during the.
yeah. And
pandemic.
then to the
But-
point, the bullet
Yeah.
points talking about, I've laid out mine, we have to add what you guys have brought in. And we can put that together as a separate thing.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay. Good.
and I can write both
Okay.
of these things up.
Thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other comments before we move on? Great.
Is there a decision? Wait, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, Rush was gonna put together some language.
Yeah, I'll
For us
put
to
together a
consider.
resolution. Do we want?
Resolution, a draft resolution or a letter or what?
A draft resolution, I think.
Because
but-
for the open meetings law, we had a resolution before asking for the Zoom option.
Yeah,
Right,
Yeah,
and they never acted on it, did they?
yeah, never act on it. So, I mean, we don't know if people are gonna act on it, but we should do it anyway.
yeah, we should
Yeah.
reiterate
Yeah,
these and add some.
yeah,
new
and
language.
we have new leadership in like the state
Yeah.
assembly and all of that, so we can make them aware of that.
Brendan,
One thing to note, just for the record, like, not that this will have any impact on what the committee decided when it comes to the open meetings law, but
Yeah.
just for things like the Freedom Plaza situation. Several members of the Committee on Open Government are appointed by the governor.
Yes, and that explains a lot of the pushback I got then, yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, just a little.
Thank you for that piece of information.
Yeah, I count three people appointed by the governor, and the lieutenant governor is
Yeah.
also on the committee.
And how many people in total on that committee?
There are 10 people on the committee,
Yeah.
3 of them are appointed by the governor. One of them is the lieutenant governor himself,
Yeah,
so
So that's 4.
yeah.
just something I thought I'd note for the record.
And I just want to tell you that you guys were fantastic on that committee, by the way.
Oh, thank
You
you.
were so professional, so patient, so good. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
okay, so moving on to old and new business, the only thing I have to report is that we did receive the citywide statement of needs for facilities was released.
Oh, so early, that's good.
Yes, However, Jesus has gone through it, I went through it as well. We don't have any projects in our district this year. So
Wow.
one option is we simply don't need to comment, or, I mean, Jesus, technically, you said we have to hold a public hearing even though there's no projects here, is that true? Or can we? say it's not
That's what,
applicable to us?
that's my reading of the charter. I don't think that's necessarily a huge undertaking simply because we hold a public hearing every September for the budget requests. No one ever comes. So you open it, you close it, there you're done.
Yeah.
I think the bigger question was whether to bother writing a resolution or not. I know you were more in the camp of not bothering. I would like that actually, because it's one less resolution to have to manage. Part of me, I guess the only reason I was thinking we should is that to sort of close the book on the projects that we have had, saying, okay, in this year, this thing is no longer here and that thing has disappeared and or whatever. But I don't know how essential that really is if anyone's going to be like tracking these projects in our statement of district needs resos through the years or anything. So um, I don't know that I'm
Okay,
willing to die on that hill.
yeah. Any other thoughts on that? Because my feeling was that there's no projects relevant to us. There's no reason why we would pass a resolution. I mean,
Yeah.
you can go back and look at last year's resolution and see, oh yeah, there were some projects and see that we didn't have any this year. So I don't see any point to really
Yeah.
putting together
We don't have to give an update.
communication to the elected saying, this is, how we stand on these
That's
projects
this
that
one, we
no
don't,
longer exist.
yeah,
So we can just have at whatever our next meeting is, we can simply open a public hearing,
yeah,
check the box, say we've done it, but
yeah, in
Doesn't
case someone
apply to
wants to
us.
come and comment on it.
Jim, you have a comment?
Yeah, it's actually new old business, I guess. Now that we have a new controller, I'd like to raise again the issue of reducing the assumed compounded annual growth rate that the city uses for its pension funds, so as to equal that of New York State. It's 110. New York City's assumed compounded annual growth rate is 110 basis points above the state. And as I've mentioned in previous meetings, the prior controller had been basically chasing yield at higher risk to the investment portfolio. So I think perhaps maybe a letter or a resolution asking Controller Levine to consider it, reducing it down to the state level, just to ensure the safety of New York City pensioners.
Okay, so I don't think the issue is that there's a new comptroller. I think the issue is that we don't feel as a committee that that's a worthwhile endeavor for our committee to.
Yeah, did we ever, I think we
opine
sent a
on.
letter last time, did we never send a letter? I know we asked someone to speak and no one came, but.
We've
No,
never,
we never sent the
since
letter.
I've been here,
Yeah,
we've
we haven't
never
sent the letter. Okay.
touched this.
Yeah.
So I really don't,
So I
I
think,
don't see any appetite among the committee to opine
sorry,
on
say
what.
again?
Sorry?
I couldn't hear you.
Said, I don't think there's any appetite on the committee to put together such a resolution or proposal to opine on the interest rate of pension funds. That's simply outside of the manageable interest or.
Well, we do discuss the budget, Steve, and if we end up having to fulfill the budget obligations of the pension fund, it's gonna blow a hole in the New York City budget.
Okay, so would you like to take a straw poll right now with the committee? Let's do
Can
that.
I ask Jim a question?
Sure.
Yeah.
Hi, Jim, how come we're able to go 110 basis points above the state?
Well, Tanya, I don't really want to get into a discussion.
Okay.
I want to say, does the committee want
Oh,
to
okay.
discuss the topic?
All
So-
right.
And
I think we should.
so all those in favor of putting this topic on an agenda for a future committee meeting?
Yeah, well, is it an agenda or he wants to send a letter?
He wants to write
I
a
mean,
resolution.
Jim, do you
We
wanna
have a
send?
new controller who may be open to it.
Yeah, so he's not, I think if I.
How would we send a letter
Responsible
as a
than-
committee
than-
without having a resolution?
We could do a resolution or a letter.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah, I'm opposed to any such
Yeah.
opinions from a community board to
Yeah.
the comptroller on pension plans. So,
Mm.
and so all those in favor of putting together a resolution on gyms? There are no takers, Jim, so sorry.
Mistake.
Okay, any other old or new business? Okay, I think the meeting is adjourned at 7:46 PM. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye,
Bye.
everyone.